Good afternoon. Welcome to your Innovation Grants, Commerce, and Trade Committee. I'm joined by my colleagues, Council Members Bonin and Krikorian, and we believe Mr. Buscaino is on his way. And we will start with public comment. Mr. Espinosa, are there any general public comment cards?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. General public comment is closed. Unless there is an objection from my colleagues, I'd like to move items 4 and 5 on consent. Seeing no objection, that'll be the order. And the first item is the Centralized Grants CAO report back. We could have Ms. Fong from the CAO come join us.
Item number 1 is a report from the City Administrative Officer relative to the current city grants process. This is also referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Good afternoon. Camilla Fong from the CAO's office. The item before you pertains to a request of the CAO to report back on the city's current grant processes, including how the city currently manages grants, the composition of the city's grants portfolio, and how the city compares to other jurisdictions of its same size. Additionally, a related motion requested that this office, along with the CLA, City Attorney, and relevant departments and entities, would review the grants ordinance and report back on recommendations to streamline the process and structure it to increase efficiency, transparency, and effectiveness. In my report, I outlined the current grants processes for applying, accepting, managing, and reporting on grants in accordance with the policies outlined in Chapter 14 of the Administrative Code, or as it's more commonly known, the Grants Ordinance. The Grants Ordinance has pretty much stayed unchanged since 2002. So this is prior to electronic submission of grant applications. So many things have sped up since that time period. So in most cases, for instance, when you apply for a grant, from the time the notice of funding availability has been released to the submission deadline, it's average of 30 to 45 days. So in terms of that, the requirement to have to get prior approval from mayor and council before submitting is a moot point, since the majority of grant applications, the deadline turnaround is roughly 30 to 45 days. So that requirement doesn't even apply anymore for us. Also, in terms of accepting a grant, there's no specific requirement to have departments accept a grant within a certain time period, unless the grantor has requested that you accept that grant and sign all the documentation within a set period of time. So usually there are delays. Often departments who have maybe a board of commissioners or some other a governing body, they first have to get approval to accept from that body first and then go to council. So that adds time on the acceptance side. So if your grant is for a 12-month period, you've already lost quite a bit of time in being able to implement your grant. So then departments are stuck having to come back and saying, we've had to go back to the grantor and ask for an extension. We now need to, ask for some additional authorities in order to maybe reappropriate funds, move things around, maybe even adjust your what your project is going to be about. We also, in an effort to look at the city's grants portfolio, analyzed the city's last 3 single audit reports for 2013, 2014, and 2015. That's in attachment 2, your report. So the city receives between $400 and $500 million a year. Certainly if you add the proprietary departments in, it's about $500 million a year. The majority of grants that we receive are from a core group of about 16 federal funding agencies. We manage a portfolio of between 185 to 215 grants at any one time. Also, we manage slightly more direct grants as opposed to pass-through grants. And there seems to be probably a pretty fairly consistent split between formula and competitive grants. In attachment 3, we also conducted a comparison of the city with 11 other jurisdictions using the per capita method. The results of this comparison are outlined in attachment 3. Probably no surprises that New York is at the top of the list, and San Diego is in last place. Los Angeles ranks number 10 in that list, and even Los Angeles County, when you put them into the mix, is probably in the middle. Probably the biggest surprise is Philadelphia and Long Beach. They rank 2 and 3 at about $1,100 per capita and $516
Can I ask you a
per capita.
couple questions about the comparisons?
Okay.
Because that's the big focus of this. We have the other motion which is coming, which is about streamlining the process, and you've alluded to some of that, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
On this, I mean, New York is 27 times what the city of LA gets in terms of grants. But if you drill down a little bit, it's not really a fair comparison because it's including education and health in that. And our numbers don't include education and health.
Correct.
And those are huge
Yeah.
grant numbers. So that being said, I find difficulty getting any sort of meaningful information out of the comparison, and I wanted to get some help with that. If you were able to find anything in particular, I mean, what I would love to see or have seen is, I mean, you said there's 16 federal agencies that give grants. Can those agencies give us the breakdown so that we know of each type of grant, which ones are going where? I mean, I know the information's out there. When I worked for a congressional office, we would get a book with the grants that are coming to our district from all the different agencies. And so I know that they track it by down to the congressional district, if not further. And frankly, I appreciate you doing a lot of hard work on this, and I want to start by saying I appreciate that. And there is obviously a lot of analysis that's gone into that, and I appreciate it. And it's very helpful. But it doesn't quite get at the core request of this motion, which was to get the apples-to-apples comparison so that we can, you know, we've been criticized by some as saying we don't get our fair share of grants, and that we need, and then the question is, how does that happen and why does that happen if it is indeed happening? And either way, we would be well served to streamline our process, and that's what the next motion is about. Mm-hmm. But going through this report, I still can't answer the question, is it true? You know, when someone says, when I have a congressional member tell me that we're getting our lunch eaten by other states and other cities, even after reading this report, I can't refute that and I can't confirm it. Is there a way to help us with that?
Well, I don't know if there is a way to do an apple-to-apple type of comparison because we don't know what grant programs other jurisdictions pursue.
But we do know, I mean, can't we ask the federal agents, each of those 16 agencies to give us that breakdown and comparison?
I imagine,
And I would go a step further. If they don't give it to us, we can do a Freedom of Information request and demand it. I guess I'm asking it fairly rhetorically and a little bit frustrated. We should have that information, and I don't know exactly, and if we don't, I think we legally are entitled to it. So think about all the stuff we get asked. I mean, we have on our control panel LA and all the rest. We give a tremendous amount of information about every dollar that we spend, and I know the feds are doing the same thing. As I said, I remember getting years ago, back in the 90s when I worked in Congress, we got these report backs with money going to the district, and they were very proud of it. So I know it's out there. And other than asking again, I don't know what else. What do you suggest that we do next to try to drill down to that level?
well, I mean, we could get more information by doing side-by-side comparison of single audit reports of each of those jurisdictions to see where their grants are coming from. They do have to.
But you're saying going to the jurisdictions. I'm saying going.
Right.
That's a lot of work, and clearly there's been a lot of work. You guys must have called some of the jurisdictions to get the information that you got.
Yes.
And I'm not interested in sending out a wild goose chase, but what about getting the information from the source? If the federal, we're mostly talking about federal and state grants, right?
Right.
And the other grants are nice, but they're less important in the sense that there's going to be different reasons why the Casey Foundation is giving to this area, or they have different. I don't expect us to get the same amount from foundations, and that's a very minuscule part of it anyway. Mm-hmm. What about asking the agencies directly for that comparison? Have we done that formally?
No, we have not.
I guess, all right, so let me reframe what I'm going to do. I'm going to open it up to questions from the group, but I think I was originally thinking of noting and filing this. I'd rather leave it open and ask you, to go back and ask the agencies directly for the comparison, the federal agencies, and then if it's not forthcoming, to work with the city attorney to do a Freedom of Information Act request or a formal request to get them to do our work for us, rather than having you do the hard work of going to the jurisdictions and getting the information, which you've gotten a lot, and a lot of this is very useful, and I'm not diminishing that at all, but I do want to get that apples to apples, and I just feel that it's out there, and if it's not, I'd like to understand why. But I'll open up to colleagues.
I guess my question is not so much about the comparison of amounts, but about the comparison of practices. And I'm wondering, because you made, I think, a good summary of why is it that our process is somewhat inefficient because of the time delays in our process. But did you see, as you looked at these other jurisdictions, did you see kind of best practices where, some cities or other jurisdictions seem to be particularly nimble at doing this that we could copy from?
Well, as a result of the experience with the ARA grants, the City of Philadelphia actually formed a centralized grants office. It ended up being put in the mayor's office, and they also decided to invest in a centralized grants management system. So those are two of the things they went ahead and did, and they also went about streamlining their process of applying for grants.
Since you raise ARA, it brings back kind of bad memories of frequent discussions that we had, many of which were led by Councilmember Alarcon, about Los Angeles kind of being behind the curve on getting ARA funding and then spending it in a way that actually created jobs and had an effective result. And I think part of the equation here that we didn't really discuss, and maybe it's hard to discuss from a policy perspective, it's more a management perspective, I guess, but we do still have an office in Washington, D.C., do we not? The city of Los Angeles? Yeah, well, that's exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess my point is, as the second largest city in the country, I would really expect a very robust presence in Washington, D.C., in all of the major grant-making departments, either from our own staff who are there or from lobbyists or others who, are the professionals at identifying and finding matches between our needs and the availability of funds. And maybe it's there, but I don't have any sense of it. And I don't know if there's a way that we can really quantify that. But maybe that's one of the offshoots that we get from the chairman's, apples to apples breakdown. If we are falling behind other jurisdictions, then that tells us that we have certain problems in those sorts of areas that we need to get remedied. Maybe for starters, just by more awareness, more presence, more active engagement with our federal partners.
I'm glad you raised the question about the other, because that's the other big piece of this, is how other folks do it, because that leads us to what you started to go down the path and what the next motion is on that we're going to hear, which is how do we streamline our process. And it sounds like Philadelphia has done some interesting things. Have there been any other of the jurisdictions that you studied that did?
Well, actually, the state of Arizona went ahead and decided to create a consolidated grants office for the state, and also invested in a centralized database that allows them to both track the grant programs that they release for other jurisdictions and nonprofit entities to apply for, as well as track their own grants that they try and get on the federal level.
Maybe on the it may have been too big of a job of asking you now to go to all 16 federal agencies. Maybe go to start for our next meeting when we discuss this with the top three, like DOJ, HUD, and transportation. I don't know what the top three are. I'm assuming it's DOJ and HUD for sure.
Right.
And just ask for the information from them on the breakdown and how we compare. Because that would probably be, that's probably, Pareto's principle, that's probably 80% of the money are in three agencies. And we can revisit this next time. So I think I'll leave this item open and we'll continue without objection. We'll continue this item. And thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We'll move to item number 2.
And Councilmember, prior to item number 2, would you like to reconsider items number 4 and 5 now that Councilmember Buscaino is here and all members are present?
Should we let Joe vote on them is the question. We had enough people. We don't need them, but all right. Without objection, we'll reconsider items 3 and 4. Seeing no objection, and yeah, now.
No, I'm good. I'm good with those items.
Great. Then they are unanimously agreed to items 3 and 4. Thank you.
Item number 2 is a verbal report from the Los Angeles World Airports relative to the department's top priorities.
Good afternoon. Mark Adams, Los Angeles World Airports. I and my colleagues are here to provide, as requested by the chair, a rundown of some of our top projects, a brief summary, and if we can provide any additional information, we're happy to do so. Unfortunately, one of our colleagues is ill today and wasn't able to be here, Lisa Trifoletti, so we will be a little shorthanded on the knowledge base, but we will do our best to fill in the.
Great.
I think you have a summary of these projects in front of you right now.
We do. And just the committee is reminded, I mean, it's something I've done since I was chair of the ITGS committee, is have the agencies within our jurisdiction once a quarter or thereabouts come and give us a general sense of what their top priorities are, how they make those priorities, and it's a way to keep us up to date so that we don't run into that situation where something comes up and we didn't realize it was a priority of the agency, and just to give us the heads up. So we'll go through them. We're not going to go into super detail, but it is helpful for us to do this. So thank you for preparing us.
And just as a little background, we did, for the most part, with one exception, limit the list to things that would be considered brick and mortar capital improvement type projects rather than policy type initiatives.
Okay, and that's fine for today, but know that that's not a limitation of the ask. When we ask for the top 10, it's the chance for you to make sure that things that need to be on our radar are on our radar, even if we don't have the foresight to agendize them. So if there is a big policy issue coming up at some point, include it. This is the way to get things that we don't anticipate agendized. So go ahead.
Okay. Do you want me to start? All right. Well, one of the top priority, I could probably say 10 of the top priority is the Landside Access Modernization Program. So there's a few parts of that I think would be fairly important to bring to the committee's attention. Number one, and again, the one Lisa Trifoletti was going to speak on today, is that the draft environmental impact report under CEQA was published on September 15th. So it is out on the street. The draft EIR basically presents the environmental analysis for the comprehensive Landside Access Modernization Program, including the APM, the CONRAC, the intermodal transportation facilities, the entire guideway, as well as all of the other roadway improvements and other improvements. So again, that has been published. We have two public meetings that are scheduled right now for October 15th and October 19th. That will be held in Westchester, and then the public comment period is scheduled to close right now on October 31st. So we anticipate right now, without knowing the number of comments or the depth of the comments we're going to get, our schedule right now anticipates being able to respond to the comments and go out with a final EIR, hopefully around early 2017, around February or so. And then we would actually come to City Council in mid-2017 or in late 2017 possibly for both project approval as well as EIR certification. At the same time, we are in the process right now of conducting a federal analysis under the National Environmental Policy Act. We're doing an environmental assessment. The scoping meeting was held on June 26th, and we anticipate releasing the final federal assessment in mid-2017 with a final EA going out probably in late 2017. So right now our environmental process is moving ahead on schedule, which is still going to allow us to complete the major program elements under our original schedule. At parallel process to the environmental process is the procurement. Right now, the most active procurement that's going on is on the APM, and that procurement is being done in two what I will call related steps. The first one is a qualification of system providers. Those are the folks that would actually provide the automated people mover system, folks like Siemens, Bombardier, the guys that provide the trains and the control systems for the trains. This is a little unique approach, but the way we're doing this is we developed what we called an eligibility determination request, and we published this request which outlined LAWA's requirements for the system. So it was the performance requirements that we were looking for an automated people mover supplier to be able to meet. So it outlined things such as the trip time from the Conrack to the westernmost station and then back. It had things such as the minimum amount of headways, the number of passengers that the vehicles would be able to carry in and out over an hour and things like that. So we have received 4 eligibility requests right now from 4 firms, Bombardier being one, Siemens, a joint venture of a company called Ansaldo and Woojin out of Korea, and another company out of Brazil called Aeromovel in conjunction with Siemens. We've approved 2, Siemens and Bombardier. We expect 1 more request from Mitsubishi, so we anticipate a total of 5 requests. So at the same time, we are out right now actively procuring for the development teams that will provide the financing, the design, construction, and the operation and maintenance of the entire system. So we released an RFQ in early June, and we received 5 statement of qualifications from 5, I will say, world-class, very qualified teams. We have recently completed the evaluation of the statement of qualifications from those teams, and we will be going to our board tomorrow with a management report, making a recommendation, making staff's recommendation on the next steps, on who should go forward in the next step of the process. So the next step of the process will be release of a draft request for proposals to the teams that are qualified. We will release the draft RFP on October 27th of 2017, and we anticipate releasing a final RFP in June of 2017. I'm sorry, October 2016 is when the draft will be issued. In the meantime, because this is a unique procurement process, we will be having a series of one-on-one meetings and meetings called alternative technical concept reviews, where the shortlisted proposers will be able to come in and present some ideas that they may have that will enable them to do the job quicker, to do it cheaper, to maybe make it more efficient before the final RFP is released in June. We anticipate receiving the proposals in December of 2017, going to our board in January, coming to City Council in early 2018, and actually having financial close and commercial and financial close on the APM contractor in about March of 2018, at which point in time the design and construction will begin on that project. So that's kind of where we are right now on the APM. I don't know if you wanted to ask questions or if you want us to keep going.
Colleagues, I'm happy for us to ask questions on the items as we go through it, or if you have questions at any time, we can do that. So feel free to jump in there. But go ahead and
Keep going?
yeah. Well, I guess one thing on that, not so much, but generally on the LAMP, the small business and small local business enterprise ordinance is on its way to enter implementation. Is it going to be implemented in time to be part of this project?
Yes, it will be. And I can see you grabbing for the microphone. I will say a few things there. We have made what we're calling inclusivity a very significant part of the performance and a requirement for the submittals on all these teams. Because the draft it's only a draft going out in October, we intend to advise the prospective proposers in the draft RFP. We'll continue to advise them of LAWA's aggressive local small business program, and we'll advise them before the final is out that we will have established it as an ordinance, and we'll have established the requirements and the criteria for local and small businesses.
So it's sort of a heads up now, but it's letting everyone know it's going to be in there.
Correct.
The ordinance is just being finalized.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, pending the full council's approval. Last week we were before the Economic Development Committee. We're anticipating it will be calendared on the full council very soon, and if it is adopted, we don't need any subsequent action by our board, and it will be inserted in the procurement document in October.
I guess what I wanted to be aware of, if there is a drop-dead date that we need to act as a council for it to be implemented in this huge program, I want there to be a red flag. I don't want
Okay.
I don't want that to be an accident,
Right.
where we act, 2 days after the time that it goes in.
Yes.
And so I'm putting a pin in that or flagging it or
Yeah.
just throwing it. Mr. Buscaino, you had a...
Can you just walk me, I know Deborah and Lisa came to my office not too long ago to brief me on what's to come, but can you walk me through the connection of light rail to the APM?
Yes, we are working right now with MTA. MTA is in design right now on a station that they call the Airport Metro Connector Station. That station is going to be a little bit north of the Century Boulevard station on the Crenshaw Green Line rail location, right on Aviation Boulevard, again, a little north of Century. So we're working very closely with MTA on the design,
Okay.
and in fact on the construction of that station right now. I meet with them every Friday. In fact, so the plan there is that station will be an at-grade station, and it will have a number of elevators and escalators that will go up. The airport connector station will literally cross over the top of the MTA's Airport Metro Connector Station, so they'll be able to go directly up from that station up into the airport's APM station and then get on the people mover.
Good.
So, yep.
Thank you for that. Connectivity is everything at that point.
I'm sorry?
Connectivity is very important, obviously. Thank you.
The other major component of LAMP that's in the procurement process right now is a consolidated rental car facility. Again, that's about $1 billion project that will be done using a P3 partnership similar to the CONRAC. We are in a couple steps on that right now. We're finalizing the term sheet with the rental car companies. That on basically establishing the terms that they will move into the new consolidated rental car facility on, and we are working on a request for qualifications now that we hope to release before the end of the year with statement of qualifications from the CONRAC proposers to be submitted in early 2017, and then we hope to release a final RFP later on in 2017. Again, our feeling right now is the CONRAC will be able to be built in less time than the APM. So even though we're a little bit behind schedule, the procurement should be done about the same time, and the CONRAC should be built about the same time as the APM. We don't see a problem with those schedules coinciding. So,
Mr. Bond.
Question on the CONRAC project I've long been championing. One of the benefits to the CONRAC that I've always seen is reducing all the different companies' shuttles in the central terminal, which is
huge.
Real impact on traffic. What's the mechanism of making that part of the CONRAC happen? Is that part of what is happening as you're making the agreements with the companies?
Yes, I mean basically it will be that the rental car shuttles won't be allowed into the central terminal area. So if you don't move to the CONRAC, you're going to have to bus to the APM station in order to have somebody get on the APM in order to make it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. The next terminal project then that's fairly important on our list is the Midfield Satellite Concourse, which is the next concourse that's being built immediately to the west of the Tom Bradley terminal. That is being delivered using a design-build contract. It's actually been under contract. We just had a safety barbecue, so I can tell you how many, 613 days exactly, because we've been out there 613 days now without a lost time accident. But that project will add 12 new gates to the airfield, 12 new contact gates. It will be a different facility than what exists at LAX today because it's a midfield concourse. It'll be more similar to the type of facilities that you would see at, say, Denver or Atlanta, where it's actually accessed underground as opposed to being accessed from the curbside. So passengers will essentially get to the midfield either through a tunnel connection coming through the Tom Bradley terminal or on buses from other terminals where they would get bussed out to the midfield. Although the majority of the passenger traffic will be connecting through the Tom Bradley terminal, it will be primarily an international facility that will act as an extension of the Tom Bradley terminal. Again, we'll be adding 12 new gates on what is the first phase of this terminal. At some time in the future, there is another phase that will add approximately another 9 gates to the southern portion. But right now, the American Airlines maintenance hangar exists in that location. So we do anticipate going to the board, the second board meeting in October, with the final costs on that project, and then coming to City Council for final approval of the construction contract and the final construction contract in terms and conditions on that contract. So right now it's going well. It is scheduled to be completed, and so far it's on schedule to be completed about November 2019. So, all right, just keep going.
On Terminal 2 and Terminal 3, your council approved a new lease with Delta Airlines in the last few weeks to approve their relocation to and renovation and improvement of those 2 terminals, particularly Terminal 3, which they're looking to completely renovate. This will provide them improved adjacency relative to what they do now, what they have now, but it would also help other airlines improve their adjacency issues, what with some of the partnerships and mergers and whatnot that have taken place in the airline industry, this will give American the capacity to be closer, be not disconnected at Terminal 4 and Terminal 6, and some of the other issues like the JetBlue, the Virgin Alaska merger. Delta has already started with some of the enabling projects on this, but the significant construction will probably begin the middle of 2017. This is after there's an EIR that's being worked on right now for this project. That EIR will be, we expect to be approved in early 2017 after the draft EIR later this year. And the lease expects Delta to have moved by 2018, but that could happen sooner, but there are a lot of airlines to be relocated, and we think, but we will as we work out that relocation schedule, those airlines will be appropriately relocated to their new locations. For Terminal 1, Southwest is in the middle right now of a significant renovation project at Terminal 1. They're sort of working their way around the terminal in a counterclockwise fashion and redoing the gates and the passenger hold areas, concession areas. If you were to go there now, you see some areas that are new and some areas that are under construction and some areas that are not so new, but they're working to redevelop their 14 gates, and with improved passenger amenities and new technology and better passenger screening and all the improvements at a cost of $530 million is what their cost is, and then we're going to buy back about $508 million worth of the improvements. And that, because they're trying to do this while they're already still operating in Terminal 1, we expect this work to continue through the end of 2018.
I would add that one of the keys to the Terminal 1 improvements, because that terminal, like all of our terminals, was designed and built before the new TSA requirements came in, probably one of the most significant customer experience improvements, in addition to just the whole terminal being made new, is a much more efficient and expanded security screening location. So it's, if you guys remember when we first started after 9/11, the line used to run all the way down to T3, trying to get through T1. And one of the primary things that will get fixed in here will be the new TSA screening. So we'll definitely improve the passenger experience.
Similarly, in Terminal 7 and 8, United is working with us to do a lot of work there. They have 4 smaller screening checkpoints now at different ends and vertical locations in the terminal, and they will consolidate all their screening into a large 12-lane checkpoint on the mezzanine level. They're also redeveloping the terminals for the passenger experience, 19 gates with 26 bridges, so some dual bridge gates. That again is at a cost of $573 million, and we're acquiring about $534 million worth of those improvements. And that project is scheduled for completion at the end of next year. Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Willard, and I'm from the guest experience team. And you've heard many of the priorities right now. A lot of them are facilities focused and all of our investments on the facilities. But our top priority is also on the guest experience. And so the guest experience was launched over the past year to focus on the level of satisfaction of the passengers. And we like to refer to them, or we're trying to begin to refer to them as our guests, and to focus on a more hospitality-centric model. I think the biggest action items over the past year was that we have begun to participate in Airports Council International, the Airport Service Quality Survey. And with that, there's around 300 airports from around the world that participate in this survey. And the surveys are conducted on airport property with the guests that are on departing flights. And the questionnaires ask them about their level of satisfaction in every aspect of their experience at the airport. We're doing this to find out how we score in comparison to other airports that participate in the survey. It's a starting point for us to find out where we need to improve, where we're doing well, and where we need to focus our projects on. And what we've learned over the past couple of quarters, things that are important to the guests and things that they are not satisfied with. And in addition to us participating in the ACI survey, we're also doing an LAX-specific survey. We have a contract with a company, it's called Unison. With the ACI survey, it's a standardized survey. Every single airport that participates, we all have the same questions. So that's why we have an LAX-specific one. And in addition to the guests that are flying out of LAX, we're also surveying guests that are arriving, and as well as the meeters and greeters and well-wishers. We want to get the input from everyone that is experiencing LAX to get their feedback. So this is, the guest experience is still in its infancy. And so our starting point is to get the feedback from our guests that are using the airport. At the same time, we've also created a guest council. So internally with LAWA staff, we've created a group of staff members to provide input and to provide guidance. And in addition to the internal council, we will be launching an external council as well. We want everyone in the airport. So it's not just the City of LA LAWA staff that are involved. It will be our tenants, so the airlines, everyone will be a part of this. We find that if someone complains about their experience, maybe it might have been at the security checkpoint, they look at the airport and not that it was, say, TSA. So as an airport as a whole, we want to address the experience. We are going to go to the board in October to request contracts for training, guest experience training. And at the same time, we're going to go to the board for performance management. And what's included in that is coaching, mystery shopping. And again, this is airport-wide. So everyone at the airport, at LAX, will be participating, will be a part of this.
That's great. Because I was going to ask, you have the IEA survey that comes out every couple of years. And then these surveys, the ACI and the LAX specific, are annual, or how often?
Yes, so the ACI, it's actually conducted, well, we get the results quarterly. And out of the almost 300 airports that participate, we have the highest number of surveys conducted. We have around 3,400 surveys conducted. Other airports that participate, they on average have around a few hundred surveys. So we have a large number of guests that are participating in it. And our third quarter results are going to be coming out soon.
And this is your main, those are the main metrics that you're going to have for measuring customer satisfaction?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
We look forward to hearing the results of those as they come through now and on into the future. It'll be nice to see that track. Mr. Bond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kudos on this. I think this is a wonderful effort, and I'm glad to see. I know it's really coming from the top, and Ms. Flint this is something she talked to me about, I think, in her job interviews, that this was something that really needed to be done at the airport, and I'm glad to see it. There's a couple of different aspects of it, though. Part of it is sort of there's the concept of soft power and hard power. There's the soft experience. It's, how polite are the people who are waiting on you? How friendly are they? How courteous are they? All that type of stuff, which is great, and I think you're really getting to. But then there's the hard aspects, and this might be more a question for Sampson. I mean, I for better or for worse, I'm sort of a living customer satisfaction survey. Whenever someone finds out the airport is in my district, I get it. Well, let me tell you about my experience. And for a long time I got, why isn't there free Wi-Fi? For a long time I got, there's just not enough charging stations or enough cords, or there's not enough water fountains. I get from anybody who travels internationally, there's not a good children's play area. I know there is, but nobody knows it's there, and it's small and it's hidden. Other airports have sleeping areas. Other airports have massage areas. There's all sorts of amenities. Harder to do, and I think it's sort of, I'll point more towards Sampson on this one. Harder to do because I think of the way we negotiated the Westfield contract a few years ago, probably makes it a lot harder for us to sort of dictate what goes in there. And I think we have a better consciousness now that there's things we need to do on the facilities end, the sort of brick and mortar end, to improve the passenger experience. How the hell do we do that?
I think you've said it very, very well. Some of them are very, very challenging, but this initiative really does not foreclose some of the agreements we have in place. You raised the agreement we have with Westfield, but I'll give you an example of another agreement we have with Boingo for providing Wi-Fi services. When we entered into that contract, the business aspect of that was some return to LAWA and allowing the contractor to make some profit. Now, based on what we're learning through these surveys, we're changing that dynamics, that approach. So we are prepared to the extent that we ultimately have the ability to give the customers what they need. We are willing to look at that differently. We're willing to work with our various customer contractors to redo the agreements. A little bit the difficulty in the areas you mentioned is it's the footprint. It's what we have is a really major challenge. But to the extent that there are some changes could be applied, we are willing to relook at our business objectives so that the customer satisfaction becomes more important than the revenue that we're looking for from these agreements.
Yeah, I mean, it is a question of real estate. I mean, if you're going to have a sleeping area or another children's area, that means you're going to have one fewer newsstand or sundry store or something like that. Maybe in the future reports you can include both the soft and the hard aspects of the customer experience. Thanks.
Will do.
The next category we have is Airfield Projects, and one of the main one I'd like to highlight is something that came out in the recent agreement with RSAC that we approved, which is the Interim North Airfield Safety Improvement Program. This is obviously a very important aspect, both from a safety perspective and from the community perspective, and we're anxious to get moving on that. And we're working with FAA right now to sort of figure out how we're going to implement those changes that were in the RSAC agreement in the next 3 years. That's the implementation timeline that's spelled out in the agreement. I don't really have a lot of detail to provide today, but we're happy to provide the committee updates as we move down that road. Also in the RSAC agreement is the West Remote Gate Relocation Program, and we'll be again moving forward on that, which will eventually remove those west gates from service, but provide new gate opportunities elsewhere in the central terminal area as laid out in the RSAC agreement.
The last, I'm sorry.
Just a quick one on that. Well, two quick ones. Is there a pronunciation for the acronym I-NASIP?
I've heard it INASIP. I don't know if that's
INASIP, okay. Because it's a long
yeah.
thing. So we're waiting on the FAA before we
No,
can
we're
move
working with FAA to figure out how we're going to stage those things. We're not waiting on FAA, but we had a meeting with FAA to discuss these things. And
so the planning and environmental teams at LAO are ready to do the environmental work?
they're getting work. They're getting ramped up on that right now.
And when do you think we'll have a schedule for the CEQA and NEPA?
I wish Lisa were here to give a better answer. I will be happy to provide that offline.
Thank you.
The last project is part of the Airfield Projects, and it's actually two. We are completing, continuing to complete the FAA mandated upgrades to our runway safety areas, which continue to create some changes in our airfield operations. The RSA work has been completed on runway 25L and on 24R. Those were done in 2015. Work on 24L will be completed next month, which will then leave finally just the 25R runway will commence this fall, and then we'll be done sometime in mid-2017, at which point in time we'll be done with all the RSA work, and we are fully compliant today because of how we're operating the airfield, but we will have new fully compliant RSAs with no restrictions on the airfield because of the RSA requirements. So those are going well. So, and I think with that, that's all the HART projects.
I had a couple of general questions.
A general question, and I'll turn it to you. But you got a lot of projects in the air at every given moment. Do you have a centralized location that lists all of that, or how do you? Is it a database? What do you use to keep track of it all?
Actually, when we started the LAX development program back in 2008, we set up an organization. I call it CALM, which stands for Construction and Logistics Management. And it is exactly as you've said, it's a centralized database where we have a database of every project, and it's actually a GIS database. That includes not only three-dimensional locations of all of the projects, but also a time element. So at any period of time, we can see exactly which areas of the airport have construction activities occurring, and that includes not only geographically, but again over time. And we use the CALM database to coordinate all of our shutdowns. For example, we do close to 500 utility shutdowns a month right now in the central terminal area because of all the construction going on. That all goes through what we call the CALM group or the Utility Shutdown Coordination Center. We do the same thing for any kind of area shutdowns, street closures, road closures. If a contractor wants to shut down one of the lanes in the CTA, they have to put in a request through the CALM group. Actually, we model the potential impacts of that. We also use the database then to look for opportunities. If a contractor wants to shut a lane down, we may find that another contractor put a request in for a similar shutdown a week or two later, so we'll ask them to coordinate, so we only have to shut it down once. So the simple answer is yes, we do. We have a very robust database to coordinate all of the construction activities in the CTA.
It's called CALM?
CALM. Yeah, the idea was keep calm.
Right.
It's kind of a Zen moment at the time, so yeah.
Mr. Bonner.
Two questions about stuff that's not on the list. One's parochial and one's more global. First one, the more parochial one. I noticed that implementation of the Northside Development Plan is not on this list. Was that an oversight, or are you telling me it's not a priority?
It's
It's a very good question, Councilman.
there are a lot of projects that we may have included on the list that are priorities to us. I think that would fall into this category. It's just we had to develop a short list, and unfortunately, we didn't include this one.
Ms. Flint, no, I'm asking. This can't just be a press conference. We've got to make it real.
Understood.
The second thing is I didn't see security on this list, and that really concerns me because this airport is a known terrorist target. It has been for a very long time. In the Blue Ribbon report that was done a few years before I took office, one of the things that the airport was really faulted on was not making security a high enough priority. And it dinged the general manager at that time, or the executive director, for not attending some of the high-level security meetings. And particularly with so much going on at the airport, where sort of the contour of the airport and the hardscape of the airport is changing, I just think there's a lot of vulnerability there. I'm still not fully convinced that we've completely implemented a lot of the recommendations from November 1, 2013 after action report. And it just worries me, given the risk, the security risk at this airport, that security isn't something you list as one of your top 10 priorities.
Councilmember Bonin, let me state very clearly that's not an oversight. I think we set this up in anticipating of what the public discussion was. It was clear to us in the beginning that whatever this committee needs to know, we need to put it on this list. Frankly, we do expect to come back. Our director have asked us to amalgamate all the previous studies and tracking of where we are with all of those. That associated with the November 1st 3-year anniversary, we expect to come and hopefully in closed session have a robust discussion, but it is not an oversight.
Thank you.
It's on top of our list.
Maybe that's something we'll do at some point. We'll do a closed session specifically on security, but it certainly should and continue to be a priority. Any additional questions, comments on this topic? It's a discussion item only, so there's no action that needs to be taken. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're going to move to item 3.
Item number 3 is the motion from Council Members Blumenfield and Weston relative to the transfer of ownership of the Los Angeles, Ontario International Airport from the City of Los Angeles to the Ontario International Airport Authority.
And are there any comment cards in this?
No, Mr. Chair.
And colleagues, the reason I wanted a briefing on this item is because this is the last committee meeting before the transfer of ownership of Ontario International Airport. I wanted to have this discussion at the last meeting, but when we approved the final contracts for Ontario, but we had to limit our questions at that point because of the agreements on the table. So we're going to go into closed session. Ask the city attorney to...
Just for the oral record, the committee is going to recess a closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1 to confer with its legal counsel relative to the case entitled City of Ontario versus City of Los Angeles et al., Riverside Superior Court case number RIC 1306498. And
without objection, we'll have the mayor's office is represented here.
Yes.
Seeing no objections to allowing the mayor's office to be here, we will welcome you. And if we could clear the room to move into closed session. Okay. We're back on?
We are. And just for the record, no action was taken in closed session.
The record, no action was taken, and that was the last item. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.